afternoon, and thank you for joining me in another swashbuckling episode of Groovy Van Picker. Well, today is going to be kind of a part 2 of yesterday's topic, which is going to be kind of aimed at how I got into van life and stuff. And so, anyway, where do I start? Well, I've always been kind of intrigued by camping, and even as a kid, there's not a kid alive who hasn't built one of those little blanket forts and stuff. And so, the adventure sleeping part as a kid might have had something to do with it. Or camping. Or even driving someplace. I remember one time we broke down and we just spent the night in the truck. As a kid, stayed there until somebody came to rescue us. But I think a lot of it stemmed from as a kid, I kind of moved around between the Bay Area and Reno a lot. And so in a nutshell, I never really called any one place home for too long. And I remember I was born in a little town called Daly City, California. I lived there for the first few years of my life, but then I moved to Reno, then moved back to California, moved back to Reno, and then for a while, when I lived in Sun Valley, we had year-round school, 9 weeks on, roughly 3 to 4 weeks off. And so when I was on my vacations, I would go to California to visit. So there I'd be in California, all my friends were in school, but I was on vacation. It was weird. And people thought I was weird. And, they weren't too far off. But it was just one of the things that I was just so used to. And even when I lived in California, I used to like visiting Reno. And I did that for a lot of years, especially when I lived in Reno. I'd go to visit California. And I moved back and forth. I even moved to the Philippines once. And so I guess that kind of brought about the wanderlust in me, because of that. I've just, even though I've always had a place to call home, I've never been like kicked out on the streets, but even as a little kid, I moved around, and then later on in my adult life, I moved to Oklahoma. Why? Why not? And I remember the boss, where I was working before I left, he kind of smirks at me and goes, "You'll be back." No, I won't. A year later, I was back, working at the same spot. The boss where I worked at goes, "I told you." Yeah. But even on the trip to Oklahoma, I remember sleeping in my truck on the way out there. We didn't rent no motel. We stayed in our vehicles. We rented this U-Haul, And we stuffed my friend's car in the back of this U-Haul. That's a funny story in itself. When we first rented it, Jim measured this car, and it was, he measured, like, we rented like a, was it a 15, 14-foot U-Haul. And his car was like 13 feet something. So he's, oh, we got this made. And he screwed up the measurement. We didn't realize that when it says 14, 15-foot truck, that is from the mom's attic, the part that hangs over the front of the cab to the back. So he measured, I don't know, I can't remember how he screwed up measuring it, but he screwed up. And he thought it was going to fit. So we take it down to this rail yard or something, found a ramp, got the car up into the back of the U-Haul. I'm sitting there, okay, how much more room you got there? That's it. You got any more bright ideas, genius? And he's like, what's up? He had to jump out the hatchback of his car because he couldn't open the doors. He had to jump out the back, gets out of the back, gets down, looks at it, and just says, fuck. That's going to be a tad bit conspicuous because it's about 2 feet of car hanging out the back of the U-Haul here. So we went back to the U-Haul place and gave them this cockamamie story about we had this dresser that was too long, and they gave us a deal on a 1-up size, and it fit with about that much room left over in it. And then we had my pickup and a tow bar on the back. And we did that both ways. And the fun part was getting it out. We had to find another rail yard with a big old ramp to get his car out of the thing. And then give them their U-Haul back. His 1988 Mitsubishi Precise, aka Honda Excel. Same difference. And so we, doing that, it kind of brought this wanderlust of, I liked traveling Route 66 and all that. But at the time, I'm doing my job and just kind of living. Then later on, when we got back from Oklahoma, I actually got married. And even when I was married, moved a few times. I moved to Reno, back to Chico and stuff. And I stayed in Chico for several years, and I was working and just doing my normal, thing. Just making trying to make a living, And, we had the groovy house and had my 10 cars and all that kind of stuff. And howdy. And then I got divorced. So, when I got divorced, what did I do? I moved again. And so we moved back into my mom's old house, and she passed away. That was one hell of a time. And Gino had this, my stepdad had this fifth wheel camper, and I remember even a few times when me and Brandy used to visit at when we were still together, we used to sleep in that thing. My friend Jim, he had a camper for a while, parked in my mom's yard until he built an actual shed and lived in that. It was kind of a groovy little setup. Bed, TV, just everything you need right there. And even that kind of set the seed, but I was like, I don't know. So, later on, we started working on selling my mom's house, and I'm like, okay, well, I gotta think of something. Because my 74 Ford Maverick and my 84 Olds 88 is not going to cut it as far as a domicile. Didn't have a truck. And I didn't really know much about living in a van. But I did buy a motorhome. And I actually gave it a test snooze for a while and kind of liked it. And I was thinking about renting a place to park the motorhome, and I was actually going to park it at my father's house and live in that in there. That kind of fell through. Had a little falling out, nothing heavy. And then I rented a little apartment and sold the motorhome off and got together with this girl in Wichita, Kansas. But the idea was still in the back of my head of, well, then me and my ex-old lady in Kansas broke up. So I was actually looking at a cab over camper or some kind of a van or motorhome. Just kind of thinking of how to make it work, but it never really came to fruition. So I moved back to Chico, stayed there for a while, and like I said, I was working, and I was also attending my swap meet racket. And that was when I met this colleague of mine at this job that I had, who actually lived in a cab over camper on the back of his pickup anywhere he parked it. And I've seen people do that all the time. I never thought it was very feasible. But he said, yeah, he got a little battery isolator in there and charged up his phone and his laptop, and he could just go to work anywhere, and he would just park near the job site. Like, that kind of put the idea in my head, and I was kind of wondering about it. And then the job that I had didn't work out because I was literally spending more on gas sometimes than I was actually making. I kid you not, one time I worked a job, it costed me $38 in gas, and after taxes I made like $35. Yeah, that was not cutting it. And I had my motorcycle, but I was doing work on that, so I had to drive my truck, which got like 12 miles per gallon. So then I moved down to my sister's house and took a full-time job renting a room from her, and it was actually a pretty groovy place there, except for the fact that it was in the Bay Area, in the city. But other than that, it was pretty groovy. And I was doing that and working on my swap meet and trying to improve that. And she bought a van. And I was actually using this van mainly for swap meets. I also used it for moving. When I moved from the Bay Area to Chico and then to Missouri, we drove that van. And even before that, I used to go up to the Chico to visit all the time on my days off. I'd drive my yellow van up there. I'd sleep in the van. It was so peaceful out there in that van. It was just like, I'd drive up there, visit the kids, and instead of sleeping in the house, which, every room had people in it and there's no privacy, I'd go out in my van and I'd go to sleep. And it was just, I had my little mattress out there and everything. It was kind of peaceful. I remember one time I woke up, made some coffee, made some breakfast, had my little camp stove in there and stuff. Neil comes out feeling sorry for me. Hey, Jaco, come on in. And I'm like, hey, Neil, come on in, have some coffee. He sees my little setup. He's like, oh, this is pretty neat. It was pretty groovy. And so, but that's when I really thought I could live in this comfortably. And then I moved to Missouri, and I was going to stay in the motorhome and drive around and do that, but the motorhome turned out to be a pile of junk, and I sold that. So I was doing my flea markets and my eBay and my traditional job, not doing too shabby. And Missouri didn't quite work out. We all moved back. And again, we stayed in the vans on the way out there and the way back. But I remember, being out there every time I moved to Oklahoma or Kansas or Missouri. I'd be out there on the side of the road sleeping or just listening to the cars driving by. It was just so peaceful. We pull off the side of the road, someplace, maybe a truck stop. We didn't stay in a trucking spot, so the truckers out there, don't start throwing darts at your computer screen now. We'd pull over, we'd stay in a spot where, designated for cars, not you guys' spots. It was just peaceful. And then I stayed in Chico for about a year, and I was doing my swap meets and eBay and stuff, and I wasn't doing too shabby, but not quite where I wanted to be. So I took a traditional job in Reno, moved back to Reno, which I'm at now, and I have not lived in a building since. I am parked right now on some family property, my motorhome, but I don't have no use for the house. I'm trying to sell it. I have, over the past few years, slept in my van. Right now I have two vans. At that time I only had one. But even over the years, when I first moved to Reno, I had only one van. Now I have two vans and a motorhome, and a pickup and a motorcycle. So my yellow van, the transmission went out, so I kind of stayed near work for a while. That's when I almost got busted for suspicion of van life. But it was pretty comfortable in there, I had everything I needed. I had my food and my TV set, little 12-volt TV set. And I got rid of that van. I kind of miss it, but it needed too much work. And so then eventually I bought a motorhome, which is at the house right now. That's where I live at. And then I bought my 69 Ford, my 71 Chevy. And both of these vans I have slept downtown. They're both right now set up so if I have to, I can camp out wherever I'm at for a couple of days. And that includes food, water. I'm working on the shower, but I do have I can take a rub down if I have to. I'm working on a proper shower. And so, like I said, I have not lived in a traditional building in well over 5 years. I have no intention on it. And right now, my situation is I have solar panels. I go down to the store and buy 5-gallon jugs of water, a couple of them every week. I have no intention on living in a building. If I wanted to, I could probably move into that house, turn the water and everything on, but the thing is, over the past few years that I've been here, what I've been working on is learning how to properly live in a vehicle. And I figure if I can't handle it parked in the backyard, there's no way in hell I'd be able to handle it, anywhere else. So that's what I'm doing now, is working on how to do it and do it right, where I'm comfortable in it. And that way, and also make sure my vehicles are up to snuff, which they're getting there. And I'm actually happy doing it and comfortable doing it. And I really have no intention of living in an apartment or anything like that. No way. Especially an apartment. It's bad enough I had a bunch of busybodies stalking me, places that I've worked at. Last thing I need is my busybody neighbors stalking me, and I've had that before when I lived in an apartment here in Reno for a while and up in Kansas for a while, where neighbors would be asking, "How come you're home?" What? None of your business. Because I come home 5 minutes late. Who the hell do you think you are? I'm kind of a private person, even though I put my life on YouTube. And so it's none of their business what I do. Anyway, that's kind of a synopsis of how I got into van life, interested in it. That's where I'm at now. And I am getting ready very soon to start traveling. I'll keep my motorhome, my other van for a backup, but have it with my storage in a super secret location. Anyway, wait.